Hook. 3 sentences to grab you. I'm sitting in 1A in a worn college sweatshirt holding a paperback and thinking about dinner for my kid, and a woman in pearls taps my shoulder and tells me to move. They thought it would be simple, like shooing a stray dog off the couch, but they didn't know who was reading the book. This is a story about being judged by how you look and what happens when the quiet person at the front row pulls the cord. Act 1. Setup. The ordinary turned tense. It's Christmas Eve and the small regional airport is getting chewed up by a windstorm that looks like it could keep everyone grounded for a week. People are standing around in sweaters stained with coffee kids or falling asleep on carry-ons, and the digital board blinks the last departure codes before cancellations. I'm Maya Hart. Not that anyone on the gate would guess I run Palisade Capital. I look like what I'm trying to avoid: a tired mom hair and a messy bun, a faded sweatshirt from a school I barely graduated from ages ago, and a tote bag that has survived more airports than some sales reps. I bought 1A for one reason. I had just closed a brutal week of restructuring a shipping network, and I needed sleep real quiet. Legroom that doesn't pinch a bad knee. Boarding begins the jet. Bridge breathes cold air, and I walk down the aisle of a wide-body jet with everyone's tired stories buzzing like static. I slide into my window seat, stow my bag, wrap the headphones around my neck, not even to play music, just to put a wall between me and the world. And for a moment it's just me and the paperback. Then someone taps my shoulder. A quick practice tap that says, "I get what I want," the way a gavel says, "Court is in session." I lower the headphones. Standing in the aisle is Charlotte Hayes. White faux fur coat, sunglasses for indoors, a Birkin-style bag in bright orange that looks like it has its own security detail. Beside her is Gavin Hayes. Bespoke suit, an expression that has been coached to intimidate. Charlotte says loud enough for half a cabin to turn their heads, "Excuse me, you're in my seat." I smile because smiling is safer than scolding, and I hold up my boarding pass. "Nope, that's mine. 1A, I say. The machine had printed it 3 weeks ago when I booked the quiet I'd earned. Charlotte laughs, but not the little laugh that bridges an awkward moment. It's the laugh that slaps a name on you and pages through your life without reading it. "Honey, there's a mistake," she says. "We always sit 1A and 1B. You can move to row 4, it's still first class." That's when the air changes. Not because of what she says, you can be insulted any day, but because of how she says it, like she's deciding what color the sky should be. Gavin steps forward with a calm that smells of privilege. "My wife gets anxious if she doesn't get a window," he says. "This will be easier if you just—" I put my headphones back on. "No, thanks," I say. Not loud, not brave, just clear. He tries a different tack, the kind of money-laced suggestion that is put forward as help. "We can compensate you. 500, 1,000, whatever." The cabin leans in. The man in 2A picks up his phone under the nap of how people pretend not to watch. Let me be honest, the offer wasn't the insult. It was the assumption that money could fix the humiliation they were doling out. Charlotte says, "Look at you, how do you even get up here, Miles Employee Pass?" She's not trying to be clever, she's trying to make you small in front of strangers to make everyone know where you belong in the social seating chart. Act 2. Tension rises interior life, and the turning point. The flight attendant, a kid named Luis with a crooked name tag and more patience than sleep, tries to de-escalate. He checks the manifest and the little screen says, "Yes, Maya. Hart, seat 1A. Clearly assigned." Charlotte doubles down because outrage feeds her. She snatches my headphones and the cabin goes silent like a theater when a spotlight cuts out. She leans in perfume, thick enough to fog a mirror, and hisses, "You will move." That moment, the world narrows. I think about my son, about the ham in my cooler, about the 70-hour week of spreadsheets and phone calls and getting people paid. I think about how many times I have been sized up by a look dismissed by an assumption. You get tired of being polite to people who think your politeness is proof of your place. Gavin grabs my arm, a move that is more spectacle than force, and when his hand lands I stand up and I'm not loud, I'm not theatrical, I am simple and direct. "Don't touch me," I tell him, and there's an authority in it that isn't panic. The crew calls the purser calls the captain, and the captain, a man with enough years in the sky to be weary, suggests, the easiest option, that I deplane and come back in the morning. They want to avoid a delay. They want to avoid paperwork. They want to make the entitled person happy so we can all get home. Here's the part people forget when you own a thing that matters to people's lives. Pensions, hospitals, school funds. You act differently. I pull out my work line, a secure direct line we use for urgent corporate stuff. It's not a stunt, it's a tool. I dial while the purser explains the options like she's flipping through the pages of discomfort. 2 rings. Then a voice that makes the cabin go quiet in a new way. Maya, is everything all right? It isn't the airline CEO's voice. It is the CEO of airline's largest creditor. The man we had the debt talks with last quarter. He knows the airplane we are on because his firm underwrote the lease. He knows the servers and ops because his team financed them. When I say, I'm on Flight 217, Seat 1A, help me resolve a passenger interference. The tone on the ground changes from bored to sharp. You could call it leverage, and it is, but you could also call it stewardship. I am not dialing in to humiliate Charlotte or Gavin. I dial because there are people who rely on the money I manage, teachers and firefighters, and municipal employees whose retirement is not meant to be collateral in someone's ego play. The call gets the attention it needs. Captain Peters goes from placating to iron fast. He looks at Charlotte and Gavin and says, "Either you take your seats or you get off. Now." Charlotte loses it. She screams about calling corporate, about going to the news, about family connections. Gavin tries to pull the sympathy card. He says he'll miss a meeting, a pitch, a number. And in that breath, he names his company Atlas Freight. And as soon as that name leaves his mouth, something shifts in my mind. Because Atlas Freight is a company we were looking at for a Series C, a risky position, documents flagged in red on my desk. An analyst's quiet note, a flagged covenant breach. Suddenly, I hear the echo of a due diligence file I've been staring at. This is the twist, the little private calculus that changes everything. Someone who thinks they can buy a seat with entitlement and cash just handed me the very proof I need that their company is unstable. I am capable of letting that slide, or I am capable of doing my job. Act 3. The fallout and the moral cut. Port Authority officers arrive not because of me, but because the chain of command was triggered. Charlotte swings her bag and lands a panicked swipe at an officer, a stupid, sassy move, and her temper meets law. They are escorted off the plane, wailing about reputations and lawyers. The cabin breathes out like an audience exhaling at the end of a long scene. People clap quietly, some laugh, some shake their heads. The plane closes its doors and the engines roar like a verdict. The next morning, Gavin storms into a meeting room looking for $50 million and finds instead closed doors and a slideshow with red flags. The video from Seat 2B exploded online overnight, a shaky recording of Charlotte berating me of Gavin's offer to pay off the problem of my quiet, "I am not moving." And it becomes context in a room full of investors who do not like reputational risk. The same men who would have once smiled across a table and promised introductions now say, "We can't be associated with this." 2 weeks later, Atlas Freight files for restructuring. Palisade doesn't celebrate that. We move in to protect the workers. We buy the viable assets, recapitalize the pension, change the board. We keep the drivers working and the warehouses open because the people who punch clocks and feed families aren't the ones who caused the mess. They're the ones I answered the call for. Charlotte ends up doing community service in the very terminals she once treated like a catwalk, scrubbing floors and learning what it feels like to be anonymous. Gavin reboots his career in a far less glamorous role, and yes, people talk about karma like it's a law. The flight attendant Luis gets a scholarship for training. Someone notices the grace with which he handled things, and a modest gift changes his life for the better. Here's the uncomfortable part. Not everyone thinks what I did was right. Some people say I used my power for revenge, that I weaponized finance for humiliation. I get that. It's a fair critique and one I've wrestled with. But there's a difference between weaponizing and enforcing accountability. If the choice is between protecting the vulnerable or protecting an ego that will hurt more people tomorrow, I choose the pension check. I want you to imagine something for a second. That woman in the fur coat is your neighbor, or your child's teacher, or the person who took your shift one week and never thanked you. How do you want the world to respond when she decides someone else should be invisible for a moment of convenience? Do we look away? Do we clap? Or do we quietly use whatever tools we have to make things right? Final beat. Call to action. So tell me, what do you think? Was I right to make that call? Did justice happen or did I overstep? Have you ever been judged by your clothes, your accent, your quiet? Drop your story in the comments and don't hold back. I read every single one. If this hit a nerve, like and subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the person with the faded sweatshirt is the one paying for everyone's flight. And hey, next time you see someone who looks like they don't belong in 1A, maybe ask them their name before you assume their worth.